And then Lance replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Tyler says, "I am, I'm sorry."
Tyler Robinson, the young man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk at a Utah college, sat pretty quietly in a courtroom this week as prosecutors laid out critical pieces of alleged evidence against him at a very important preliminary hearing. And if this case goes to trial, he's staring down the death penalty.
He started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it.
From testimony from Robinson's alleged lover to details about those engravings found on bullet casings, a demand from Charlie Kirk's widow, DNA evidence, all of this, we are going to cover it all. We're going to analyze some of the biggest moments from the days-long hearings and ask the question, is it enough for this case to move forward towards trial? And has enough been shown to dispel potential conspiracy theories? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by
23-year-old Tyler Robinson is the man accused of shooting Charlie Kirk in front of thousands of people at Utah Valley University back in September of 2025. He's now facing 6 felony charges, including aggravated murder.
This is one of the most high-profile cases in the country right now. A judge is hearing evidence against Tyler Robinson, the 23-year-old accused of shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk in the neck, killing him. This happened last September at Utah Valley University, where Kirk was hosting an event for his organization, Turning Point USA. And now all this time later, months later, we are finally getting a glimpse at some of the evidence against Robinson as part of a days-long preliminary hearing. And this is where the judge will decide whether there is enough there, whether there is sufficient evidence, whether there is probable cause to support the charges to take Robinson to trial. Because
prosecutors have made it clear they intend to seek the death penalty if this case goes to trial. This week, that preliminary hearing, the one that decides whether there's enough evidence for the case to move forward, finally wrapped. Judge Tony Graff isn't expected to rule until oral arguments happen on September 1st, but over 5 days, prosecutors put mountains of evidence on the record, and it got dark fast. Robinson has not entered a plea, and under the law, he is innocent until proven guilty. But here are 7 moments from this hearing that stopped the courtroom cold, and what they could mean for what happens next. Let's start with moment number 1, the texts that read like a confession. According to testimony from investigators, hours after the shooting, Robinson allegedly exchanged a string of messages with his roommate, and prosecutors say romantic partner, Lance Twiggs. In them, Robinson allegedly admits to the shooting outright.
Okay, and Tyler says, "I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." And then Lance replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Tyler says, "I am, I'm sorry." Lance says, "I thought they caught the person." And then Tyler says, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude and interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering."
We could scroll down to page 3.
Describes going back for a rifle he says he stashed near campus, and repeatedly apologizes for involving Twiggs. At one point, according to the agent who read the messages into the record, Twiggs allegedly asked him directly if he was the shooter, and
Lance says, "Why?" And Tyler says, "Why did I do it?" And Lance says, "Yeah." Tyler says, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything in the news about them finding it. We'll update you shortly, or Charlie, we'll update you by midnight." And then Lance says, "All right, stay safe. How long have you been planning this?"
Scroll down a little bit, please, Kimberly.
And Tyler replies, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it."
We can scroll down to page 4.
Robinson's reported reply was one word,
"I
am."
left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. I'll bet that canine sniffed it out. Little snitching. Replace it, unlikely. I don't fully know what the gun was because it was old and Gramps did some modifying. There was a 4-digit serial on it. God only knows who it's registered to. Hopefully some dead guy who gave it to Grandpa." And he continues, remember how I was engraving bullets? The messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke.
And then continue. I'll stop you in a moment.
He says, all right, I'm going to have to leave it. That really sucks.
And let me stop you there. And then if we could go on to the next page, page 9. And do you see the first blue message we see on page 9? Can you start there?
Yes. So Lance says, do you need it for hunting? And Tyler says, no, my dad wanted to use a high caliber for the rifle hunt. Judging from today, I say Gramps' gun does just fine. IDK. I think that was a 2K scope. Lance says, geez. And then Tyler says, OMW home 3.5 hours. Lance says, drive safe. And then Tyler says, delete this exchange.
And I'll stop you right there.
Rich, okay, full picture here. You said, of course, there'll be jokers who capitalize it. Of course, 100%. But is there anything from what you're seeing
with him?
that
Prosecutors say
Did
he
you
even asked
communicate with
Twiggs
any
to
of
delete
those
the
people?
entire conversation
I saw one
afterward. It
individual that
wasn't
was on top of the
deleted.
hall
It's
flags
now
right
Exhibit
next to
A
me.
in a capital murder
Okay.
case.
And that was before
Moment
the
number
shooting.
2 is a
Yes, and
witness
I
who
saw
never
several down in the
actually took
crowds
the
and
stand.
down by him,
Here's
yes.
where things
And
got
were you
legally
aware of whether
messy.
that person
Instead
was
of
armed
putting
either?
Lance Twiggs on the witness
wasn't aware
stand
he
in
was armed.
person,
Are you familiar with an individual named Lance Twiggs?
Yes, I am.
And who is he in regards to this investigation?
He's the roommate of Tyler Robinson.
Was he interviewed as part of this investigation?
He was
How many times?
2 times.
When was the first time?
The first time was the early morning hours of September 12th, and that occurred at St. George Police Department.
Do you know if his phone was taken from him?
It was.
When did that happen?
So it was during that interview with FBI at St. George Police Department. They conducted an interview of him, and then he provided his phone. He did it voluntarily also, provided it to those agents.
And that would have been on September 12th, 2025?
Correct.
You mentioned a second interview of Mr. Twiggs? Okay, so for any statements made during the interview, they're given immunity for that, but they're not generally prohibited from being potentially prosecuted outside of that interview. Is that fair?
That's my understanding, yes.
Was Mr. Twiggs given use immunity?
Yes, he was.
The April 20th, 2026 interview was being taken in lieu of him having to come and testify at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, it was. Yes, he was.
And there was a lot of
prosecutors played a recorded interview from earlier this year, one where Twiggs was granted use immunity in exchange for talking. The defense pushed back hard, arguing that if prosecutors wanted this testimony to count, they should have to produce Twiggs live under cross-examination, not a video nobody could challenge in real time. Judge Graff allowed it anyway.
So let's start with the first one. I was a little surprised. This Lance Twigg interview was much more substantive than I thought it was going to be. I thought the purpose of this was going to be to authenticate text messages where Tyler Robinson allegedly confessed to the crime. But this was substantive. This was about their relationship. This was about what did Tyler Robinson do this day. This was about him allegedly confessing. It was a very substantive testimony. And of course, at trial, you could never present it like that. You could never show a video of a witness testifying. You have to bring him in and put him on the stand, and he has to be subject to cross-examination. And that's what the defense said here. The defense said if they want to put Lance Twigg on the stand, they ought to bring him in and put him on the stand. And the judge said, no, it's only a preliminary hearing. We're only establishing probable cause. They can do it this way. And I was a little uncomfortable with that because, you know, every headline this morning says Tyler Robinson confessed to murder. That's what the New York Times, everybody else, those are the headlines now. This was the defense's point. You let the guy go on the stand by pre-recorded video testimony, not subject to cross-examination, and now it's been picked up by the world and treated as if it is, you know, solid evidence. We didn't even have a chance to cross-examine the guy.
Well, I'll also push back because I remember the screen.
ruling that a preliminary hearing only has to clear the bar of probable cause, not a full trial standard. The result, Twiggs recorded words, including him saying Robinson broke down and admitted he wishes he hadn't done it.
So he acted erratically. Was he pacing? Was he just sitting down, relaxing?
No, he was walking around a lot.
And that's within the home.
Mm-hmm.
And did he talk about what he had done?
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. He started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it, and then kept going around and just doing stuff, I think, to keep himself busy or distracted or something.
Okay.
Became
Did he talk
instant headlines around the country without a single cross-examination question ever being asked. Moment number 3, DNA that points in more than one direction. DNA evidence sounds like a slam dunk on paper. In this hearing, it got complicated. A forensic analyst testified that Robinson's DNA was found on the rifle recovered near campus, but so was DNA from his father, and traces from Twiggs were found on a towel connected to the weapon. The defense used that opening to hammer the reliability of touch DNA.
About the department's preparedness leading up to the Turning Point event.
And do you know how many UVU officers you guys employ normally?
There was 15.
And do you know how many were assigned to cover that event that day?
That were assigned to cover it. There was 6 of us there was patrol 1 and then 5 others that were there with the chief.
Did you all have an idea there were going to be thousands and thousands of people there? Or was that a surprise to you?
Had an idea.
And you only had 5 officers?
6, yes.
6, I'm sorry, I'm counting you, I was
Yes.
thinking. And of those 6 officers, are you all armed? Do you carry weapons?
Yes.
What type of weapons do you carry?
Glock, pistols.
And was there any use on campus of, I think they're called magnetometers, but the machines you walk through at TSA in the airport where it checks to see if you're carrying anything metal, what we all had to go through to get in the courtroom. Were there any machines like that set up or being used on campus that day?
No.
And as far as you know, were there any drones that were flying above campus that day?
Not that I know of.
Getting the government's own analyst to admit on the stand that DNA transfer between people is possible and that no test can be called infallible. It's not enough on its own to blow up the case, but it's a preview of exactly the argument the defense plans to make if this goes to trial. Moment number 4, a security plan built for a fraction of the crowd. One of the most uncomfortable moments didn't come from the defense trying to clear Robinson. It came from questions about how this happened in the first place. A university police officer testified that only 6 officers were assigned to cover an event that drew thousands of people. No metal detectors, no drones overhead, And
did anyone ever talk to you about covering anything near or on top of or in the Low C building? Were you ever assigned that area before the shooting?
No,
Do you know who was?
I don't.
And when you got up to the roof that afternoon, was anybody around that was law enforcement?
No.
Nobody on the roof?
No.
Nobody on the stairway?
No.
Nobody on the walkway?
No.
Okay.
nobody had been assigned to secure the rooftop the shot is alleged to have come from. It's not a defense to the charges, but it's the kind of detail that raises hard questions about whether this tragedy could have been prevented. Moment number 5, bullet casings engraved with messages. Investigators testified that cartridge casings recovered from the scene had messages engraved into them, references investigators tied to internet meme culture.
Beyond the reasonable doubt. It's much, much lower. And I want to ask you one other thing that I thought was interesting. The bullet casings that were apparently found at this crime scene had engravings, and these were specific messages. And they have linked it or potentially linked it to this Dremel tool that was apparently found at Tyler Robinson's home. It had, they also apparently found the same kind of ammunition at the shooting scene in his home. I actually spoke to Joseph Scott Morgan about that, and he thinks that there's going to be a specific expert to match the engravings to handwriting, which I think is really interesting. But that's something I don't even know if is getting that much attention, right? The engravings on the casings on top of, like you said, the surveillance, the DNA, the potential confessions. I thought that was interesting too. Entered a plea. Okay, so to talk about some of the biggest moments of the preliminary hearing and what we can expect next, I want to bring on litigator Rich Schoenstein, good friend of the show, good friend of mine. Rich, I'm so happy to have you on because there's so many things I want to talk about. You know, it's not just, I mentioned at the top, not just if there's going to be enough evidence for this case to move forward towards trial, but also has enough been shown to dispel the conspiracy theories out there? Because there have been a lot of issues, particularly brought up by Charlie Kirk's family, Erica Kirk, about transparency. So first, I just want to go into this. Where we sit right now, we're recording this Friday morning. There isn't a decision from the judge yet. I believe there's even more testimony that's going to happen. But having said it, if you were sitting right now, do you think the prosecution has presented sufficient evidence at this point for the case to move forward towards trial?
Yes, no doubt. I have no doubt on that. I think 100% this case is going to trial.
What stands out to you? What are the pieces of evidence that you say, my gosh, I mean, there is sufficient probable cause to support these charges?
Multiple alleged confessions.
Those are the
tracking of his whereabouts in a manner that seems consistent with him having been in the area. Some DNA evidence, but really multiple alleged confessions would get you probable cause.
And I want to get to that in a minute when we talk about Lance Twiggs, but the DNA I find to be fascinating. You know, they talk about how there is DNA linking him on the towel, on the trigger of the bolt action rifle, right? Potentially the casings. Now you hear the defense fighting back about that. They say, well, wait a minute, you know, it's not definitively him. Could it be touch DNA? They may have something to say, well, why is Lance Twiggs' DNA also on the towel? You're getting a semblance also of what the defense may argue if this goes to trial, right? What do you make of those counter arguments regarding the DNA?
So I think those are good arguments at trial. If this was a DNA only case, I think it might be a bit of an uphill battle. I think the defense would be in it at trial. I still think there'd be probable cause, but I think the defense could have something to say about that and cast enough reasonable doubt that the DNA gets you there to sort of deal with that part of the case. But then there's the rest of the evidence.
Yeah, there's the rest of the evidence. And again, just something to make clear, this is a much lower standard. This is a much lower standard by which the court has to find, is there sufficient probable cause to move forward? It's not beyond